Okay, the first thing I notice about this scenario is that they start with information welcoming you to what this scenario is about, and then you start to go to all the locations within the environment. I tend to want to separate the introduction and the information about the scenario from the actual when you get involved, when you're actually using characters, etc. So let me show you a very quick way of redesigning this so that we have the start button someplace else, and we'll use a location map so that we enter the scenario. Okay, so what you can see here from the breadcrumbs, we've got current view, general locations, start. Now over here on the location map tab, you'll see general locations, and that's what's mapping this name right here. So what I'm going to do is change this so that we say at the office. And this is actually going to be when we've actually begun the scenario and we start talking to the various characters within this office space. And the initial location isn't going to be start any longer. It's actually going to be your office. Now what we want to do is go to the scenario tab, and we want to add an extra location. So if you click on this plus button here, what I'm going to do is add a location called introduction. Okay. Now we want to change our initial location map. Rather than starting straight at the office over here, we're going to say we want to start at introduction. Okay, so this person really has used quite a few different maps here. They're all the different maps that they've used within this scenario, so they are jumping between. The advantage of having maps is that if you have a lot of locations to go to, you can actually separate them. So you would make it far more logical grouping together, let's say, all the things that happen at the office. Then if we had to go visit a character who's at home, we might have the kitchen and the lounge room, etc. at the home. And we can separate these into maps and use doorways to go into the next location map. Okay, so very important, before we actually restart this scenario, do a reset state, which will start us in the introduction map, I want to be able to also move this page. Now, I can just delete it and know that this content page over here is still packaged up in the background of the SBLi files. However, to make it easy for me to see, I want to rename this, and I'm going to call this introduction. Because it's not really a start button as such, it's actually giving you information about the scenario. So now that I've actually called this icon here, I've gone to its content page and I've called it introduction, I can actually delete this, and I know that it's sitting in the background waiting for me to map it to a different icon once I've placed it. So now I'm just going to quickly redesign this a little bit so it doesn't look quite so crowded. And now I shall do a reset state. Now what reset state does is it takes you to the beginning of the scenario. And as you can see, we are now in current view, introduction. And at the moment it's empty. So I'm going to click a location, and this is going to be our new introduction. So I'm going to say introduction. So now we have this icon saying introduction, and make sure it's selected so it's highlighted blue. I can now go over to my drop down box, press I for intro. It'll take you to the first occurrence of a page that starts with the letter I. We'll click on that, and there you go. You've got your content now connected to this new icon. Then we can just go to our media library, and if you've already got some icons installed, then it'll be easy to do a search on some icons. So what I'm going to do is do a search on intro and see whether I have an icon that might... Intro header, that doesn't work. Okay, so what would an intro be? Like a microphone or maybe a pen? I'm just going to represent it with a pen. So this is information about the scenario, and information is generally written by a pen. That's my thinking. Okay, so now we've got the introduction, and it says click on your office. We would change that to say click on start. And what I want to do now is put another icon in here. This one is going to say start, but it's going to map. So I tick this little icon here. It's going to map to at the office. And let's give it an icon. So from my media library, I have got some icons in here that I know of that are called door, and it gives a little, indicates that you're actually going to be going someplace. Now, at the moment, you can see this default page. Don't worry about that because it's actually just a doorway. So if we were on introduction, as soon as we click on start, it's a doorway, it takes you someplace. You don't actually see the content of a portal door.